Hi everyone, I'm Alan. I'm here because Natalie asked me to say a few words about my career in tech. So I wrote down some notes. I'm going to do this in one take, no editing. Let's just get some raw enthusiasm out there. So let's see what happens. I'm going to try and tell you a little bit about basically the milestones of my journey in tech. And then I'm going to try and abstract the one key lesson that I would like to convey to you from all of that. It's like the one thing that if I could tell you one thing about your career in tech that you can do, that's the one thing. So I'm going to try to do that. So I'm going to start this story. I'm going to start this story with a little tragedy. It's a story I've told a billion times. I used to tell it as a joke. People would find it funny. Nowadays, I have trouble seeing it as a joke anymore. To me, it's just a sad thing. And I'm going to tell it to you. I don't know why, really, but I'm just going to tell it to you anyway. So the reason I started programming is I moved with my father to a very tiny city in the middle of nowhere. There was nothing to do. I had no friends, no money, no nothing. And I started tinkering with the computer. So I had read a bunch about programming. I didn't know how to do it. I knew kind of what it was about. This was early days of the internet. You couldn't just go and download a thing, and I didn't speak English very well anyway, so it was even harder. And my father had this one friend, and the guy had a book about the Clipper programming language. I have no clue what Clipper's for. I actually never learned it. But this guy had this one book, and I really wanted to borrow that book so I could learn to program, because programming is so cool. I need to get into it. Long story short, the guy never brought the book. I called him, I reminded him, I asked. He would always forget the book. He just didn't care. Eventually, he was an alcoholic, just like my father. Eventually, he downed the whole bottle of whiskey. He shot his wife. She died. The kids had to go live with the grandma, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, the story is he got drunk. He shot his wife. The police showed up. He shot the police. And then he ran out of bullets and he turned himself in. He was arrested. And well, the end of the story is the poor lady died. The kids don't have a mom or a dad. The grandparent had to take care of the kids, blah, blah, blah. I ended up without my Clipper book. And that's the story of how I had to right-click the browser and go in to see the source code, and that's how that's how I got my start, basically. I don't know why I'm telling you the story. Eventually, I learned some Visual Basic 6. That's how I got my first job when I was like 12. And that was boring, and at some point, I made some friends, and that was cool. And we had a channel called #hacker on the local chat thing back then. And it was not hackers plural, because hackers plural was a bunch of grown-ups doing computer things, and the hacker singular, which is our channel, was just a bunch of kids fucking around. So when I met those friends, it was really cool because we would share things and we would teach each other and etc. And eventually I learned to write C. I learned a bunch of stuff about security. It was the Wild West for hacking, especially in Brazil, where I come from back then. I hacked into universities. I hacked into internet providers. One day I joined the chat and my host name was somethingbank.com. And on that day, I thought I was the coolest kid in the world and the greatest hacker to have ever lived, and that was cool. With this group, I also started drinking. I had my first bit of alcohol when I was 12. By the time I was 14, I was really hooked on it. But around this time, I started learning PHP. I wrote my own CMS. Then WordPress came out. I was pissed because it was better than the thing I had written. And long story short, when it was about time for me to become an adult and choose a career, I was full of it. I was like, you know what, to hell with capitalism. I don't want to work for a corporation, blah, 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 blah. I decided to be an artist. So that was a 10 years detour from tech when I learned to play the violin. I started playing the violin in a professional orchestra. I did the whole, traveling around playing opera for a while. Then I quit that, did other things. At some point, I was like, you know what? Remember that programming thing? That was fun. Maybe I should go back to it. And so that's what I did. I started studying programming on the side. Eventually, I quit my job. I did my technical homework. I was like, okay, now people use JavaScript, not C. I learned Go, etc. But I was quite lost. Like, I knew how to do things. Like, if you put a computer in front of me and tell me, write this app, I could do it. But I was quite lost in terms of, okay, how do I make a career out of this ability to type things into a keyboard? And someone gave me a really good bit of advice. Someone said to me, well, GopherCon is just around the corner. Maybe you could volunteer to go help them because it's in your home city. And then you make some friends, and then you can ask your friends for help. And that was great. And I volunteered, and I went there every day, and I did the best I could to be helpful and nice to everyone. And I ended up making a ton of friends. And some of those friends became basically mentors to me at the time. It was really great. It helped me a lot in my career. Because of those friends, I shot higher for my initial professional experiences than I would have otherwise. My first experience was, my first paid experience, let's say in tech was, well, I mean, my first job when I was 11 doesn't count, right? But my first real tech job was an internship writing code for Kubernetes with a great team from Google. I did that for 3 months. That was fun. If you don't know Kubernetes, it's kind of a big deal in the infra world, so it was a huge privilege to be able to do that. And when that internship was over, my first job was at a company in Brazil, and my first title was Systems Analyst 3, which is better than, Systems Analyst 1 or 2. So, I was off to a great start. And the reason I got that great start was because I had enough knowledge from my friends to know how the business works. So I basically positioned myself where I was demanding a very high salary and title. And what I had to do to achieve that was to go work for a company that didn't care about how big my CV was, but who was interested in what I could do. So I went there and I told the interviewing person, I'm amazing, I can do anything, I just don't have a CV. And he was like, well, show me. And then I showed him and I got the job. So that was good. I would never have done something like that if people had not told me that that's something I could do. So that was cool. I gave a talk back then about this subject, about how important it is to connect with people, and how me having a good head start in my career back then happened basically, I put in the effort, but if I hadn't had all that guidance, things would not have worked out. So my first talk was on that subject. And I kind of got hooked on talks after that talk. It's just so much fun. And I was like, well, what if giving talks could be a career? Turns out it can. And then I got a job doing exactly that, doing developer advocacy for a company in Berlin. That's how I moved here. Eventually, I moved from that company to the company I'm at right now, that is in New York. And that's cool. But then one thing happened. There's this whole thing going on in the news about some virus or something. So that kind of put a wedge in my plans, because at that point my whole career was basically built around conferences. Do the talks and do the networking and talk to customers and blah, 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 and everything, conferences. And at some point I would be like going to 3 countries in the same week to give 3 different talks. And it was a lot of fun, but then it was all over all of a sudden. And I was quite lost for some time. After that initial shock, I started doing more product work. So product management, product strategy, that kind of stuff, more of a bird's eye view instead of just being in the weeds. I really liked that. But at this point, I was a bit lost because I was thinking, okay, I'm doing all of this managey stuff, management, product, something. Is there a future in it? I mean, my CV is very short. Like, can I have a career in this? I don't have an MBA. Can I be a manager? I didn't know what to do. Maybe I should, is developer advocacy going to be a thing now that conferences are over, basically? It was a confusing time, and it was confusing for quite a while. And something that happened very shortly, not too many even months ago or weeks ago, is a bunch of friends who used to be very loosely connected. Suddenly feels like from one day to the next, everyone became an extremely tight clique, and we all started discussing those things together about, well, I don't know what to do with my career. Is the stuff I'm doing the right stuff? Can I grow this way or that way? What kinds of jobs should I be looking at? Like thinking long term and what I want to do and what's possible, and how much should I be getting paid? And everyone started asking those questions. And it was a very rich experience. And out of that group, quite a bunch of people have got new jobs or new titles or promotions or new responsibilities and roles since then. And it has been such a short amount of time. And I'm basically, the whole reason I'm doing this talk is because of this group of people, really. And so I'm going to reiterate the advice that I gave 4 years ago on my very first talk, and that is, the best thing you can do for your tech career is to make a ton of friends. And not just a ton of friends, like I don't mean have 1,000 Twitter followers, that doesn't matter, but have a small group of friends that you really trust, that you can be really genuine with, and they with you. Put your best self there, and great things are going to come out of it. Now, here's one important thing. So I gave that talk 4 years ago, and nothing has changed. This is not new advice. Make friends in your career, in your niche, in the area you want to work on. Gossip between yourselves, share advice, etc. That's not new. But one thing that came out of that talk that a lot of people were asking, and it's kind of disheartening, is lots of people were wondering, well, it's easy for you to say, you're on stage, you have something followers on Twitter, your hair looks funny. Well, now it looks boring, but I used to have more interesting hair in the past. I got an award even for the hair at some point. Anyway, so people would say, well, you're on stage, it's easy for you to say, everyone wants to be friends with you. What do I got? I'm just a newbie, how am I going to make friends? So what I'm thinking here is, what do I have? And I want to share my own experience. What do I have that entitles me to the benefit of having a bunch of amazing friends? And how can you do the same? So I'm not neurotypical. I think the last thing the doctor said was Asperger's. So this whole social dynamics thing was quite complicated for me to figure out. And I always had trouble with friendships. It was always hard for me because I never knew, I come from a very shitty background. I alluded, my father's best friend shot his wife. You can tell, you can imagine the rest of the story of the background I grew up in. So I never got the kindness and the warmth, let's say, growing up that usually healthy people have had, and I'm not really good with human interaction. I'm not good with puns or barter or friendly flirting or being supportive. Ask Natalie, I'm not a very good friend. At best, I'm a very absent one. So I've been there in that situation of like, well, what am I going to bring to the table to make a bunch of really cool friends? And at some point, I think I kind of figured it out. So I'm going to tell you how it is for me, and then you can figure out your part. So I'm a fighter. I'm one hell of a fighter. I'm a survivor. As long as I'm not physically dead, I'm fighting. That's me. And when I tell people, yeah, and then something happened, and someone said this thing, and then I replied, blah, blah, blah. And then I can see the whole energy change in the room because people are like, oh my God, you said that. So that's inspiring. I know because I'm a fighter, because I'm a survivor, because I never give up, I know that people find things I do impressive. And it doesn't matter that they're impressed with me. It matters that they can see that they can do things like that themselves. And the other thing that I bring to the table when I make friends is, because I am this, quite fierce, wild animal, and I don't think I look like much, but I am that crazy creature anyway. When I'm looking at someone, I don't know that the fact that they look harmless or unimpressive I don't know that that's the case. I do not trust that people are unimpressive just because that's what they look like. I don't trust that someone who looks completely unremarkable isn't secretly the most awesome person in the whole world. I don't know, and I don't trust that. So whenever I'm looking at someone, whenever I'm talking to a friend, I'm not talking to however boring they may think they are. I'm talking to the wild animal hiding in there. And I think people find that uplifting. And I think people see the way I'm looking at them, and for a second they see what I'm seeing, and then they see a version of themselves that they didn't know they had there. And I think that's those are basically the things I bring. I'm a very wild fighter, and people find that inspiring. And I always see that element in people, and then people find being seen like that even more inspiring. So basically, that's what I bring to the table. I'm not the best person in the world. I'm an extremely flawed human being, but guess what? I have enough good things that I get to be friends with a lot of awesome people. And my point is, you can do the same, because, you know, I have this group of friends I'm talking about. Some people are really famous, some people are really rich, etc. It doesn't matter. No one person in this group is as amazing as all of us combined when we are talking about a situation that this person's facing, or some ambition that this other person has. And when we get our minds together to look at any one situation, we are stronger than any of those individuals would be. And I've experienced that myself when my friends have helped me, and I have seen that happen from others when the group helped another person achieve what they wanted. So to wrap this up, what I'm saying is the best thing you can do for your career is to find a group of friends who are kind of working on the same industry or something like that. Be friends, be there for each other, fight for each other, and you fight for someone, they're going to fight for you. And there is no book to read, there is no technique, there is no nothing that is going to bring you a best result than that. Having friends that you fight for and that they fight for you. And whatever you have in your head that's telling you that, oh, I got nothing, why am I ever going to be friends with a bunch of amazing people? Just don't listen to that. You may not consciously know what it is that you bring to the table, and it took me 1 billion years to find out, and that's okay. The point is, it's there. As long as you're present, as long as you care, whatever your secret superpower is, it is going to be there. It may take you some time to identify it, but it is there. As long as you care, as long as you're present. So to wrap this up, find your gang, be gay, do crimes. Peace.